Hi, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. As per usual, no, my dogs are not going to quiet down. But as you can see, we have a very different setup today. It is the long promised typography video, and it just so turns out that screen recording from Zoom and Base on Mac is worse camera quality than recording it from my phone. Do I know why? No. Is my brother here to help me figure it out? No. So this is what we're going with today, guys. I'm sorry, but I'm not tech savvy enough for this. I even made a script, and then my printer ran out of ink, so we'll see how that goes. But it's 3 pages. We'll see how far we go before I lose my mind. But I took typography. Here's my experience. This is what we're doing today. And so I think that the absolute best preface that I can go into when it comes to this typography video and the discussion of typography is explaining that I am using Ditto for my font. No, I'm kidding. But I think the actual biggest takeaways I received from my experience in typography is that Comic Sans is actually a good font. It's not the worst font in the world. Comic Sans has a very, very good purpose within our society, unironically. People are really, really defensive about Helvetica and love it to the bone, and most of this video will be discussing the font Helvetica, because that's all I really learned about. Joking, not joking. But thirdly, I will never look at posters the same way again. I now get readily irritated every time I see something that is not aligned on a Swiss grid or at least kind of makes sense, and I am ruined forever. I'll never look at font the same way again, and I hate it because it's now something that irrationally irritates me when things look really, really bad. So with those primary reasons why we're here today and why typography is important and why I learned that typography is important, I am going to explain my very, very first assignment and use this to articulate some of the fundamentals of type that I learned, but also why we care. Why we care is this is a chapter of a book that has been produced, published a multitude of times, I assume. My teacher said the book is called Cosmos. I just did the assignment. I didn't read more than the chapter. Sorry, not sorry. But type is one of the fundamental ways that we communicate with other people. We type every day. If you're hard of hearing, you probably have closed captions on right now, and you are getting your information through type. If you're not hard of hearing, you might have type on because I articulate myself bad sometimes, and YouTube thinks it's funny. Or you really like Twitter, or you really like reading books or blogs or articles, scientific or otherwise, or the news, the newspaper, the Bible. All of this is type in some capacity. And before we had type within our society, we instead had handwriting. And we did a lot of that with calligraphy. And the fundamental basis of type within our current society is based on the different type of tips for calligraphy pens and kind of translating the written language into a typed language. And so I guess the initial thing I want to make very clear is that while I am going to be irritated about ugly posters until the day I die, I am beyond grateful for just how eye-opening the experience of learning the value of type is, which sounds really stupid, but I don't think I would ever really realize just how crucial type is to educating a broader society if I wasn't forced to sit down and confront some of the ugliest typefaces in the world and think, wow, if I had this type of impairment, I would get lost. Or, wow, this is really hard to read. I would hate to have a book in this font. And then further understanding how the typeface is fundamental to us valuing the information that we're receiving, right? And so with that, I hope that in my I took typography so you don't have to video, which is today's video, I can show you why type is important. So with that, our first assignment was to take a book chapter provided to us and put it into 2 different typefaces following the rules and fundamentals of type. Now, I actually typed these up. Lol, haha, yay. I said lol kind of unironically, not unironically. But these fundamentals are supposed to be applied practically into this assignment by making us go through 2 different typefaces and explore just how different the typeface itself is with the practical demonstration of what is considered the most comfortable way of receiving typed information. And that will be 10 to 12 point font, which I believe my document is 12 point. Yep. The line spacing, so that is the space right here, to be 120 to 140% the size of your font. So if my spacing, if my font is 12, the space between my lines should be 120 to 140% of that 12-point font to be the most visually appealing, and then 45 to 90 characters per line. Now, that means that only 45 to 90 letters are fitting within this line right here, right? And that is equivalent to 2 or 3 lowercase alphabets. If you so desire, you can go right here and you can just go through your alphabet like this. Am I doing my alphabet right? I don't know, because I can't see. And I'm hunting and pecking. But you're going to go like that. You're going to type out your alphabet 1 or 2 to 3 times. So 2 to 3 full alphabets, this is not a full alphabet, will span the ideal line width, right? Just no spaces, just like that, right? So there's that. Great. Now, one part of this assignment is that we were not permitted to use the base. This is Minion Pro, really? Sorry, Minion Pro is like the base font in Adobe InDesign, and I never realized this was Minion Pro. But one of the other kind of fundamental lessons is that you should never go with the base font provided. For Microsoft Word, I believe is Arial. I believe it's Arial for Google Docs as well. Try not to use Times New Roman if you can, because that's the basic that everybody uses. Things like that. If it is the base font of the program you're in, you probably shouldn't be doing it, because that means you are going out of your way to not make a decision. And one thing my teacher says is that part of typography is making the deliberate decision to do something with your type and to care about it. So, do I still use Times New Roman? Absolutely, it's what's required for most of my classes. But if I am making a personal doc for myself, I now do go out of my way to do something like Ditto, or something that is me making the executive decision to value the typeface that I am going to be typing in. But this was what was provided to us. Cosmos Chapter 1 in Minion Pro, which would be the InDesign Basic. And what I did was, I don't know what font this is, couldn't tell you. But we had to make a header, we had to change the font sizes, and we had to make sure that our lines had that 45 to 90 character, 120 to 140% space for the base text, which is here, bolded. We were supposed to have parts that were bolded, italicized, and explore how that changes how much word and letter we can have per area. And we were supposed to do it twice. Our font had to fit the aesthetic of the literature that we were reading. So I wanted, for my personal pursuit, a kind of classy sci-fi, something that felt pretty okay, pretty good, but not too ornate, because this isn't supposed to be difficult text. I wanted it to feel accessible to the reader. So I chose pretty basic text. This looks a lot like Times New Roman. I very much am aware I wasn't allowed to use Times New Roman, so it wasn't. But it was just a very simple exercise, taking a chapter of a book and making sure it hit the criteria that was necessary for a good typeface, which is just these, right? That's what means the most legible font, which was pretty good, you know? So Would I do it differently now? Absolutely. I've explored a lot more typefaces. I've gotten more familiar with a lot more typefaces. And frankly, probably should have chose Ditto. That's not funny. That's not funny. Maybe Baskerville. That's also not funny. I'm sorry. These would be funny in my class. So, to kind of further discuss these basic things that I've gone over, and I don't really know, I'm sure I have Comic Sans on my computer. Let me, for the sake of it, find the Comic Sans and put it in Comic Sans, and hopefully this will go okay for me, because I want to explain why this was important to my teacher and why explaining Comic Sans to us as being a good font was something that was very fundamental to getting me and my peers out of, sorry, I realize watching my recording software might be annoying. Why it is fundamental for getting us to understand the importance of type and how that role is played within our society. And so he did make us watch Teen Titans Go, the typeface video, the one. We had to watch Teen Titans Go. We also had to watch that meme video from like 7 years ago screaming about how the Avatar font is just papyrus. So that was great. But my teacher said that one of these crucial lessons we need to take away is that there is really no such thing as a bad font except maybe papyrus. That's a joke. Because they have these purposes. Comic Sans is one of the best fonts that you can use for teaching kids, because it's one of the only fonts that has the letter A the way that you are teaching kids to write the letter A. It's kind of wobbly, it's kind of cute, it feels a little bit more like handwriting, and so it makes it more accessible to children. This is something that is really good for if you want to try and teach somebody in kindergarten how to write. And so, I guess I don't have any other Comic Sans than Comic Sans MS. But when you're sitting here and you're thinking, wow, Comic Sans is a horrible font, you can now reframe that thought to Comic Sans is really great for kindergarteners. And while Comic Sans will always be a meme font and probably always be a bullied font, I now feel at home knowing Comic Sans exists for a reason, even if that reason is to teach kindergarteners how to write. But it's a very accessible font. The A is done in a way that's very, very easy for little kids to understand. It doesn't have anything like this, a double-story A. It doesn't have anything like that that makes it hard for kids. This is something that will help a kindergartner see a letter and copy it. And so Comic Sans does have a purpose. It is not the most useless font in the world. The most useless font in the world is probably Papyrus. But I'm not funny, I know, but I digress. And then I preloaded these documents, yay me. Then we had the classifications and the anatomy of type assignment that we had to do. And so with this, we have now learned a little bit of how we need to define type within a particular genre or a particular type of literature, right? Font should match your general kind of vibe, your aesthetic, but it should also meet these certain criteria, be a certain font size and a certain thickness with a certain line spacing to be the most legible so people are the most enticed when reading your book, right? And so with that, we moved into anatomy and the classification of type. Now that we understand how type plays a role in our usual day-to-day, now we need to learn why type is bougie and actually a harder subject than just, ooh, let her go pretty. So let's see here. Brother's dog finally has settled down. I have re-recorded this part 9 times. I am on the cusp of crying and giving up, but I know I can't because I have anxiety, and I can't just not put up a video because of the dog breathing and gagging because of his asthma. And it's not his fault, so I can't be mad at him. I am just frustrated. So, next we have our classifications of type. Did we care much about classifications of type? No, not really. We mostly just all agreed that the geometric era was really not that cool, and that the serifs on literally every other era of every other era of typefaces and kind of just type anatomy and stuff was way cooler. Like these apertures and these serifs, way cooler than the geometric. But the geometric is highly legible, which is why Helvetica is one of the most popular and universally used font faces in our entire world. So we'll talk about it later because wow, I basically took Helvetica for dummies. That's what this class was. But we didn't care too much about classification. We cared a lot more about the actual anatomy of type. So this being the bowl, right? So every letter that has something like this is a bowl. The D would have a bowl that goes like this. Apex for the A, crossbars for letters like A. I believe it's called a crossbar still if it's like a T, but maybe not on that one, but also like an H. Spines only really exist in the letter S. Eyes, so that's the circle within the letter E, but it's not an I if it's an O or a G, then it's a counter. Oh, wow. This is fun. This is a double story G. I love them. They're awesome. If there's nothing you take away from this video other than this, it's that the dot of an I is called a tittle, and it makes your life better because now you can look at every letter I and be like, dang, look at that tittle. But this was a very beneficial scan that my teacher provided us for the class because it shows us how some of the different calligraphy nibs would result in these kind of shapes and serifs that resulted in the different kind of components to the anatomy that we now have today, or we would classify at that time, right? So not super fun. No, the project we did was way cooler. Not. I had to make a poster for a font that was provided to me. I was told to do Helvetica because I have a Mac and Helvetica is free on Macs. Yay, Macs. Thanks, I guess. At least I don't have to buy Helvetica. And so we had to make an educational poster on Helvetica, kind of explaining the history of it, while also pointing out all of these other anatomy components. And it had to be in the style that Helvetica would have been popular during. So it's like a realist, rational font, something like that. Let me just pull up the poster because we are done with these. Bam, Helvetica poster. I'm also going to pull it up in Adobe InDesign and put it up on screen at some point. But we got italic, non-italic versions of Helvetica. These are all different versions of Helvetica, invented by Max Mittinger in 1957, and we have all this fun stuff. So we have the cap height, which is the top part of the big letters, the X height, which is the top part of the lowercase letters. Baseline is where they all sit. Letters like E and A, they always dip below the baseline, and it looks less dorky for it to be like this, and if it sits on that line, it's kind of an illusion. But we got our crossbar, our I, our ascender, our tittle, all these fun things. It's a rational sans serif because it doesn't have serifs. None of those fun snazzies on the edges. So, yep, no flare on the letter M's, minimal stoke contrast. It's a very consistent. Aperture is thin. Some jazz about Max Mittinger, you know, Swiss typographic font, and the fact that it is almost a cult at this point, but yes, fits better on InDesign. You can just kind of see the whole thing better. Honestly, I actually really like this poster. It's really weird to say about a poster about Helvetica, but I almost want to like put this up on my Redbubble so I can buy a copy of my own poster and be like, look at my homework. Sounds so stupid, but I might actually do it just so I can have a poster of Helvetica in my room that I made, you know? Standard poster size, this is like, I think 11 by 14. No, definitely not 11 by 14. I don't remember standard poster size. I feel really, 11 by 17. InDesign's telling me right there. Now I feel extra stupid. But when it comes to the actual critiques for this class and the things my teacher wish I had done a little bit differently, can I scroll? was to move these a little bit further away from this line, and these a little bit further away from the edges, just so that it had a little bit more breathing room. It's not bad. I don't think it's a big deal. I think, but what would have been really ideal is if, it's kind of hard to see, if this lined up with this, like all of it within one perfect grid, which we will now probably move over to the importance of Swiss grids soon, right? I believe that was my next assignment for this class, but you know, gotta refer to our handy dandy Swiss grids. Yep. So the next thing I had to do in this class was actually watch the 2-hour documentary on the font Helvetica, because of course there's a 2-hour font or a 2-hour video on the font Helvetica. Why wouldn't there be? Helvetica is like crucial to our society, and we would not be surviving without it. We would literally die. I jest. But Helvetica is the font of the Swiss Typographic International style. And with that, we get into the importance of a Swiss grid. Swiss grids have been around for a very long time, and they were primarily, I believe, used by Joseph Beckermann. I'm sure I put his name in here knowing I would forget how to pronounce it. Brockmann. I got close, Joseph Müller Brockmann. But effectively, the notion of a Swiss typographic grid is that everything you do is perfectly aligned on a grid in some capacity. Is this a good example of a Swiss typographic grid? Not really, but it's mine. I will put up a better one on screen, and I will have this thumbs up so I know where to put it. Yay! Oh, I'm so out of it today. But basically, what we had to do then was make posters for music groups or a show that has happened based on a grid that we made ourselves. And so with that, I made 2 because I was indecisive, as per usual. When am I ever a decisive person? So this was my hand-drawn draft. And I was like, okay, cool. I will line this all up on a grid, and I will have these things coming out with the titles and the location, all that fun jazz. I love Will Wood's music. Oop. I love Will Wood's music. He's excellent. I love their work, and so, of course, I chose Will Wood. And the lowercase letters. Joseph Müller Brockmann, during the course of his career, kind of went through this massive process of saying, how do I make a poster as gritty as possible? How do I make it so that we are looking at exclusively the essence of font within itself? We are looking at just type in its rawest, purest form. And so he basically went on this thing where he was like, but I mean, like, capital letters are just like an indoctrination of society, and they're not even really real. And so they do something to the font that takes away from the font, and so we have to be all lowercase, stuff like that. So in true Brockmann style, no capitals for this assignment. This was my draft. Not too bad, handwritten. I cannot write very nicely. This is my actual grid. I would be doing too much putting it in the center. Do I love it? Not as much as my other one. Is it bad? Absolutely not. If I were to do it again, I would have probably moved this Seattle Nectar lamp. Can I make this less bright? Sorry guys, it's just gonna, I'll put it up on screen. We all know that this is mostly gonna be stuff on screen. Over here somewhere, right? Not my best one. This was just one I finished because I wanted to. So let's see. This was my actual poster design that I had intended to go with from the beginning. I really, really liked it. It had these primary colors. It had these big, simple circles. And I was going to do kind of Will Wood up here in case I make it, Seattle Nectar Lounge, and then the date, right? I think Seattle's in Washington. Yes, so not even my home state, but you know. And I decided that lining this up along the grid, you know, there was too much on this side and not enough on this side. Draft number 1 was this one. And my teacher, I know it looks really, really tiny and you can't read it here. This is supposed to be an 11 by 17 poster. So it would be really, really big if you were looking at it in person. So that's that. So I kind of wanted these to be kooky, feel a little bit more Will Woody, and, you know, just in the corners, on the grid, all jazzy. My teacher then followed up his first critique and said, hey, you do not need to treat type as actual type if you want to use it as an element of art. And so that is where we got this poster, which when I zoom out, we have all of the actual information about the state perfectly aligned on the grid. Willwood, in case I make it, September 18th, 2022, Seattle Nectar Lounge, 412 North 36th Street. All of the information for this event is on the grid perfectly. And then within that, all of these bubbles are aligned on the grid in some capacity, and all of these letters are as well. But they are now artistic elements. They are not meant to be part of the conveying of actual information that we are perceiving. What we want is the perfect type on the grid. This is all artistic elements. They are now their own shape, and they just exist on their own. So, this is where I ended up, I believe. Sorry, Helvetica. I know I had another critique for this assignment, and I'm not entirely sure what happened to it. I think it was this circle moved. I think that's what I had to do. He wanted it to be different. Yeah. I think he liked it more this way than this way, just because this kind of, I don't know, it bounced on the grid better, flowed better. While he liked the overlap, it made more sense not to have it as clustered and to fill up the space a little bit better. I'm not entirely sure if this is how it ended up as the final product. I might have edited a little bit more after the fact, but I'm not 100% on that. And this is the other thing that I really want to put up on my Redbubble just so I can print myself a copy. Like, I really like this. I'm really proud of myself for making it. I never thought I'd make a poster before, and so I'm really happy with how it turned out. So, yeah, I kind of am really authentically thinking of printing out these posters, well, buying printouts of my own posters just because my printer could never print anything like this. So that's 2 assignments. I am actually a liar. I remember another really important part about Joseph Mueller Brockmann's Swiss typographic grids that I forgot to discuss, but it is the importance that all of your type changes by the exact same amount or a factor of such. So one thing that is important for ensuring that you're really truly doing a Swiss Joseph Mueller Brockmann poster is that this will be some factor of this and this will be some factor of this. So say, I have no idea what font this is. Say this is font size 1000. This would be font size 500, that would be font size 250. Or 1500 and then half of 250 is 125. That would be 125, right? They're going to scale by the same amount. They'll all go into each other in some capacity or divide into each other, stuff like that. And I kind of forgot that, but that was another really important part of the assignment that totally escaped my brain. Also, I'm not going to put them on screen. Look up Joseph Mueller Brockmann posters. It'll definitely kind of just explain the Swiss stuff a lot better than I can. He does excellent work for what he needed to do, honestly. Like, he made great posters that served as great posters. The next assignment we had will spend a lot of time on screen, but we were to make a drop cap. And a drop cap book cover would be basically taking the first letter of the author's last name and then turning it into something thematic according to the like the text that we were supposed to be seeing, right? And something thematic to the plot of the book. In my case, I chose to do Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde, nope. Yes, Mr. Hyde. And in the process of that, I went through a lot of drafts, honestly. I felt very conflicted about the overwhelming majority of this poster, and I spent a lot of time just feeling like a failure because I had to handcraft the letter S, which is really hard to do when you're not even good at writing normal letters. I had to handcraft it by basically breaking down the very spine of the letter itself, properly whiting it according to what I needed to do. I mean, my layers were killing me. Like, seriously, I was dying. I felt like I was dying, and it sucked. But it's fine. It's done. I did it. With that, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I chose to ultimately do the test tube that the serum was in that kind of started the entire experiment process and all of that jazz. It felt simple, which is what you want. You want something simple. You want something that is very, very easy to read, but gives you a taste of what the novel will contain. And the font, honestly, isn't important because this right here, the Robert Louis Stevenson, that is supposed to be subpar to the letter that is trying to communicate with you what you're getting yourself into. And so with that, I chose a very, very simple font that still felt a little bit Victorian Gothic, not super, just enough to feel appropriate for the novel, and green and red are complementary colors, so I chose this really ugly, limeish green thing to bring out the vibrancy of the red in the event that it was printed. I kind of just want copies. I just want to buy a print of everything I made for this class so that I can have it in my portfolio. I think that's where I'm at mentally and emotionally. I think that's what's wrong with me. I like having physical copies of my work. But I don't know how well it showed up on screen when I started, but I actually got my number one critique for this assignment being, never mind, I'll just reopen it because it'll probably just pop forward. Yes, being that my teacher hadn't recognized it at the time when I was actively in class going through critique until I submitted my final thing, that when you have the letter S, you shouldn't have decorative elements like this go all the way through because it kind of more strongly associates a money symbol and it kind of detracts from the overall vibe. So, I just cut it off here this time. I don't know if it's better or not this way. I kind of actually want to, just oink. Oh no, I did not hold shift while doing that. Oops. Let's try that again. Shift. I definitely want it longer than the other one though. Is that better than when it touches? I like when it touches more, I think. Yeah. Anyway, my drop cap. And I will have links to the two assignments that my teacher, to the two resources my teacher utilized to show us this assignment. One of them contains an artist who has done loads of drop caps like this. They have a daily drop cap series that they did. They designed book covers for Penguin Classics, and this is inspired by those books. So seriously, check them out. They're really, really interesting. I really mean it. Please do. If you're feeling up for it and you're interested in seeing like really well done artistic versions of what I did with somebody who's way more proficient in Adobe Illustrator and way more proficient in Adobe InDesign and all of that, and who is quite literally paid to create these things, right? So that's something that was really, really cool, and I greatly appreciated from the class was getting to see this whole type of art and the importance of it. and how it kind of just exists naturally within our world. I think that's one of the best parts of art courses that I have gotten to experience, is being presented raw versions of why these things are important and how it presents itself in the kind of day-to-day real life and all of that jazz. But next we had the DNA of type. And this document looks boring as balls. But what the assignment was we needed to take these pre-created shapes that my teacher provided us, which is a circle, a rectangle, a square, triangle, a line. I think he gave us another type of triangle if we wanted to make it. I didn't. And we had to choose one main shape and another secondary shape to create an entire consistent alphabet. Now, to my extreme sadness, I lost this file before I could finish this alphabet, and so this is what I wanted my alphabet to look like, but I could not recreate this shape perfectly. We were allowed to add and subtract and layer however we wanted to create consistent letters, right? So basically what I did is I created this shape right here. Why is zooming is so difficult with my trackpad? I created this weird shape right here by taking a triangle and cutting out this shape with some circles, right? So I used my two primary shapes to make this new shape that I used consistently throughout the rest of my letters. J and L were the ones that I was the most concerned about how I was going to execute. These were my final three shapes. I'm really sad I lost this file because I ended up having to work with, where did it go? This one. This is actually what my final alphabet ended up looking like. I just didn't get the shape to look quite as nice and curved, but I was on a deadline. I lost my file that morning and I had to get it done by my 5 o'clock class, which really, really sucked. So it didn't turn out quite how I wanted it. But basically what we were supposed to gather from this assignment is that you can truly use absolutely anything to create letters to then give written language to people, right? We were supposed to think, if we only have the bare minimum shapes, how would we use them to create a language? And how could we then make it coherent to what we already know? Things like that. And I did get some really, really valuable critiques from this particular assignment. And one of them is that I just was not doing great on my consistency with the letters T, X, and Y. So my teacher, whom I love by the way, great professor, said that if you really truly want to maintain consistency, I can't be scared of letters like X and Y having curves to them. And I really should have approached my X the way I did my K. So imagine if this X was like my K. That would be so much more consistent with the rest of my alphabet. And the same thing with my Y. If this maintained that circle curve of the proper circle I was subtracting from, this would be so much more in line with the rest of the alphabet. The letter T I should have cut off with at least these on top of these triangles just to aid in that consistency, or used circles to cut my T out just to keep that rounded nature to it that all the rest of my letters have. Honestly, my T probably could have been almost the exact same as my H and I. Another important part of this was for us to realize how similar other letters in the alphabet are. My Z and S are the exact same. My Y and M are the exact same. My J and L are the exact same, and my H and I are the exact same. And for me to truly maintain consistency, I was discussing this earlier, my C, G, and U should have all had the exact same base curve. So this should have had the same thickness here that my G and my C had to truly fall in line with my overall objective, right? So super bummed I lost my original of this. I really liked that shape a lot more. Not bad though. I still did great on the assignment, and I learned my graphic primitive. So that's all we really needed to do. Great. This assignment was strange. So let's start with the part of my assignment that went bad. So the next assignment we had to do was our alternative type assignment. And for our alternative type assignment, what we needed to do is we needed to find an object that we had enough of to create letters. So this is supposed to say the word play. I didn't do horribly, but you can see here in the L, it doesn't maintain the same height as the rest of the letters. And this gets a little bit goofy down here. I definitely needed to widen it a bit more. Also, my teacher said this background was painful to look at. Not bad. Not as bad as this one. I could not get my teacher or my brother to be able to read this first try. So, sorry, excuse me. This was my first draft that I brought to class for critique before the final assignment. These are wax melts for pressing the back of envelopes, right? And so this is supposed to say wax. I don't know if you can see it super well. This is supposed to be a bougie X. Here's the A. This is all the W. And my teacher said it almost would have worked if only I just had a little bit more space between the letters so they could breathe. And I think he was being generous because this looks like a P or an R way more than it looks like an X. But that's okay. When I got to class though, and I was like, bro, they're real bad. I found out that I'm truly allowed to use absolutely anything my heart desires, which means I also did get permission and 100% points. Oops, sorry, I punched you. 100% points to poorly crop out pictures of my cats to spell the word cat. Enjoy. This got me full points in a college class. You're welcome. The more serious submissions that I had were my party submission. So I spelled the word party out of paper clips. It had the uniformity. My teacher, when critiquing other paperclip projects, wanted consistency in the sense that if we're going to have mixes of sizes of paper clips, we try to keep it consistent throughout. So at least one big one per letter, right? Just so that they all feel in line with each other. I tried to make sure I didn't duplicate colors within the same letter, stuff like that. This was a exercise in really just exploring us making words out of stuff. More ways that we can take the world around us and communicate through type. Type can be made of literally anything if you are determined enough, right? So I also made hello out of the balls from the cat ball shooter guns that you can get. Just said hello, simple word, very clear and concise. My biggest gripe with my own is that my O didn't line up as well with the L. And my teacher said making a boxy O probably would have fit the vibe better. And I agree. I cannot argue with that sentiment whatsoever. So this was my second to last assignment. Honestly, I think this probably should have been one of our first few assignments because it would have got us thinking about the shape of letters, I think a fair bit sooner and more in the way that we needed to. So I actually have to go download my other assignment really quickly. So I will be back for the last thing we had to do because it was animated and I don't have it on my computer anymore. But I'll be back really soon for that bit. Okay, so our absolute last assignment for the semester was let's animate it. And in that, I put together this little guy, which if you open as a GIF in Chrome, it moves. I got permission from my teacher to do it on my YouTube channel name so that I could at least use it as an end card if I wanted to. It does not loop well. I had a hard time with it. But look, it moves. I did it. And I'm super excited. was really proud of myself for getting this to work because it took a lot of layers. And it was not vibing with me the first time. So, yeah, this was my final project. I got 100% on it, even though it doesn't loop super well. The assignment was really to just make type move. We were supposed to make type move in a way that was indicative of the word, so like the word heat would like waver like fire. But I got permission to do this, so that's super, super cool. And yeah, so that is typography. So in summary, while this goes out over and over again as if it was my actual outro, ultimately learning to look at type and appreciate type the way that typography taught me and forced me to do was really, really important to me, honestly. And I am beyond appreciative that I had the opportunity to sit down and force myself to actually think about type and realize the role that it plays within our society. So ultimately, if you have the opportunity to take the time to think about type a little bit further in your life and really take in the way that letters and words look around you, I recommend it. It makes you more in touch with kind of the way you perceive information, and it's something that I really ended up appreciating. So, with that being said, I hope you have, whoa, nope, not my outro quite yet. If you were interested in this topic, please let me know down below. I really, really appreciate it, especially because of the weird setup. If you know how to make screen recording on a Mac not look like it's in 180p, please let me know. Thirdly, like if you like, dislike if you dislike, subscribe if you like to see more from me, and I really appreciate everybody who has, one, said they were excited for this video, but also took the time out of their day to sit all the way through it. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are. And with that, I guess it's time to say bye-bye.